You tell me if we can call any of these successes yet, okay? Let's go backwards. We'll go 2022. Velus Jones, failure. 48th overall pick in 2022, Jaquan Brisker. Incomplete. Good player.
I don't think that's an incomplete pick. I think that's a good pick.
Player.
You
but
can't.
Isn't that a guy you're going to want around for a while? That you don't know that he's going to be around.
Well, that's because of injuries, not because of performance. Because if he didn't have the 5 concussions looming over him, he would definitely had already been re-signed.
You don't think he had
contract
concussions in college? Which one of his draft picks would you say hit?
Kyler Gordon was probably his best choice.
Wasn't even a starter. All right, you can argue how many times is he on the field.
Well, yeah, he's a starter. He's playing 75% of the snaps.
Who else?
I think Brisker was a good pick as well. He has obviously struggled with the concussion issues. Darnell Wright was the 10th pick of the draft. He's played well, but still developing.
You can't give him a grade yet. He's not playing Pro Bowl level.
No, he's not playing at Pro Bowl level.
And we all know Pro Bowl is just a popularity contest, but still. So I just keep looking at his draft picks. I'm like, all right, okay. He's moving pieces around again.
Well, it's fair criticism because the only 2 Pro Bowlers they have had over the course of the last few years, Jalen Johnson was not his selection. He was a pick of the previous regime with Ryan Pace. And Montez Sweat, who I believe went to a Pro Bowl when they traded for him, that was not a draft pick. That was a trade. So skepticism has been earned for sure. But I think that there is progress being made. And again, the number in Vegas now on this team, the total is 8.5.
Oh.
Now, there's more value with it right now because you can get like plus 105 or plus 110 if you play the over. But
I've told you how I feel about transition years with football teams. I think it can never be understated how much change does affect a team. And as much as we would love that it's going to be for the positive, it's just little change, like routines, how you're practicing, how you're learning, what's expected of you, who's your coaches, who's your teammate, now there's so much change with this team.
But if all of that changes for the positive,
great.
There is a chance that it could exceed your expectations.
Wow.
I'm not trying to talk you into a 10-win season and a playoff.
Right, because I'm not going there, not with this division, not with this schedule, as you were pointing out earlier.
The schedule's murderous, especially on the road.
Yeah, I think that you have to measure it in other ways.
That's fair.
And I think, I'm looking at that 7 to 8 win again. But boy, everything relies on one guy.
Yes.
One guy.
That is true. That's the quarterback. You have to question a lot of the things that Ryan Poles has done. You gave the list of the first through third round picks.
First 3 early round draft picks. You tell me if we can call any of these successes yet, okay? Let's go backwards. We'll go 2022. Velus Jones, failure. 48th overall pick in 2022, Jaquan Brisker. Incomplete. Good player.
I don't think that's an incomplete pick. I think that's a good pick.
Player.
You
but
can't.
Isn't that a guy you're going to want around for a while? That you don't know that he's going to be around.
Well, that's because of injuries, not because of performance. Because if he didn't have the 5 concussions looming over him, he would definitely had already been re-signed.
You don't think he had
concussions
in college?
He had a couple, but they've kept him out. How many? He missed the last 10 games this past season.
Right.
I'm not. I think on a performance basis, that was a good draft pick.
Kyler Gordon, same draft.
I think Kyler Gordon's the best slot corner in the league right now.
Okay. Zach Pickens.
No.
Tyreek Stevenson.
I think Zach will probably be on the outside looking in this year.
Tyreek Stevenson.
Massive amount of talent.
Al Harris's project.
That's right.
That is Al Harris's project to make Tyreek Stevenson live up to his draft position.
Yes.
Jervon Dexter was picked 3 picks before.
Has not developed into the difference-making 3 technique that they need him to be yet.
He's not a full season player. You see spurts of it.
Yeah.
And
saw it early last year.
Right. And you don't see it the whole time. And then you go the first round, Darnell Wright.
Good, solid starter. Needs to
Good.
take that next step so that we're starting to talk about him being a Pro Bowler year in and year out.
Karan Amagaji.
Incomplete.
Incomplete. Roma Dunze.
I think he's going to be a fantastic difference-making player.
Let's hope. But
Yeah.
again, we are hoping. And Caleb Williams.
Now, this is what I would say,
those
Peg.
are that's for a general manager?
Yes.
I just named you 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. 12 players. And we did not say, like, outside of Kyler Gordon,
Yeah.
we did not say, oh, stud. This is,
All fair. Now,
That's not good.
The only thing I would say, and I said this to you in the break, I'll know a hell of a lot more about all of those guys after this year. Now, you may think, well, why are you giving them another year? Because I think there's two parts to all of professional sports, regardless of the sport. There's identifying the talent. There's the development of that talent. Okay? Like there are plenty. I'll give you just a quick example. Gavin Sheets is ripping the cover off the ball for the Padres right now, right?
Yeah.
He couldn't do anything on the with the White Sox.
What's the common denominator? You could identify good talent, but you couldn't develop them.
Okay, so I'll know more about Tyreek Stevenson after Al Harris works with him for several months. And then I'll say to you whether or not that was a good draft pick, that was a bad draft pick. I think Roma Dunze is going to be a really good football player in this league, and I think he's going to benefit from having Antoine Randall as his position coach. I still believe greatly that Caleb Williams is going to be a dynamic quarterback in this league. I'll tell you more about how I feel about him after he gets to work with Ben Johnson for quite a bit of time.
Right.
I'll say the same thing about Gervon Dexter. As you said, he flashed at times. I'll tell you more about how I feel about Gervon Dexter after Dennis Allen has a good bit of time working with him.
Right.
So I'm not trying to cop out and tell you that, we shouldn't have come to some conclusions at this point. But I am a true believer that if you don't develop even good talent, it's going to be wasted. So I knew in my heart that last year they had the wrong coach.
Yeah.
And he had the wrong staff for the most time, but for the majority of the group.
We said that last year. We said, wow, they're really counting on the staff to bring out the talent in some of these guys.
Peg, we may find that Darnell Wright takes that next step this year at right tackle under the tutelage of a Dan Roshar. We might find out that used correctly, Cole Kmet bounces back and has a really good season, and that Colston Loveland is a guy that can excel as a rookie. We'll see if DJ gets back to being the difference-making player that he was. There are so many different guys, and I'll focus solely on the draft picks, that I think that some of the evaluation process is incomplete because there was no development of these guys. If we get through the halfway point of this season and Tyreek Stevenson hasn't pivoted and become the player that we think he can be, if Gervon Dexter isn't making more of an impact, if Rome isn't making, then I will look and say, Peg, you're 100% correct that Ryan Poles' drafts have all been below average at best.
Yeah, exactly.
But I just think that they need to be surrounded by guys that have a track record of being able to develop players before I could sit and look, wow, Gervon's not the player that they should have drafted with a second-round pick. That may turn out to be the case, but let me see them in an environment that is conducive to their development. That's all I would say.
And that goes back to what you and I were talking about with the coaches. They brought in some reputable coaches, whereas before they brought in a bunch of position coaches.
Yes.